My lords, today we are going to address machine intelligence civics, and I intend to rank them based on those I believe are the best for storytelling and roleplay. We've done this before with regular Empire civics, and based on feedback from that report, I've added in an additional category. The 5 categories I shall be using to rank these civics are peak storytelling device. These are civics that have a clear and strong theme, but also drastically change the way you play the game. Solid roleplay. These are civics with solid themes and perhaps offer small gameplay adjustments, but they don't quite reach the highs of peak storytelling. Roleplay focused stat stick. Now, this is a new category, and it attempts to fill the niche of civics with themes that offer mechanical bonuses, but don't really offer any different gameplay experience. Stat stick. These civics lack themes and are really just mechanical stat sticks. And finally, missed opportunity. These are civics that I deem to not meet the expectations set by the theme or description of said civic. But without further ado, let's begin, and we begin with Astro mining drones. This machine intelligence is specialized in orbital operations and resource collection. Its menial drones perform poorly in planet-side tasks. The key theme around this civic is essentially that you're really good at extracting minerals from space, but you're awful at extracting minerals from planets. Of course, it's not just minerals, but energy as well. This is a very popular civic to be taken with the arc furnace origin, as it certainly fits a really strong theme. Clearly, mechanically, it absolutely changes the way you play the game, as the majority of your basic resources, energy and minerals, which in reality is all machines need, are going to come from space. Thus, you're going to set your planets up differently and perhaps focus on pushing out arc furnaces as soon as possible. They're going to become much more valuable to you. I think this is a solid roleplay option. It's more than a stat stick, it changes the way you play the game, and it fits a solid theme, and that is Astro mining drones. I think this is a perfect example of a solid roleplay option. Moving on to Built to Last. Built to an exceptional standard, individual units of this machine empire require only minimal operational maintenance. This is one of the most simple machine civics on the list. It simply gives a -15% in pop amenities usage. That's it. Does Built to Last have a theme? I guess so, but I don't really think it's roleplay focused at all. Maybe it means you're hardy machines, but equally I guess there's a trait for that. I don't really think I can put this anywhere else other than stat stick. It's very simple. Climate modelling comes next. Understanding how the forces of nature can have profound effects on a machine empire, this collective goes to great lengths to study them. The models painstakingly detail every curious astronomical event to an almost sacred level. Central to their focus are the most fantastic and potentially destructive of all astronomical events, the cosmic storms themselves. This civic is an interesting one. Essentially, you can construct astrometeorology observation buildings, and your starting research labs is replaced by one of these buildings. This building gives you Unity from jobs, as well as increasing the amount of physics research you get, opposed to society and engineering. You still get engineering and society research, just not as much as you get with physics. It's a job swap, if you like. I think climate modelling is going to be a good example of a roleplay focused stat stick. I'm not quite sure it's a peak storytelling device. I'm not quite sure the theme is strong enough to put it in peak roleplay or solid roleplay, but I think that this is a really good example of a roleplay focused stat stick. You get a job swap, you get a building change. Does it really change the way you play the game? No, but it is more than, say, Built to Last, which we just saw. All that does is give you 15% pop amenities usage. I think this is a good example of that sort of middle ground that we discussed in a previous report. So I'll put climate modelling in a roleplay focused stat stick. Next up we have Constructobot. Responsible for organising all planetary construction since its inception, the machine intelligence executes efficiently on all manner of facility construction projects. The Civic gives you a decrease in planetary infrastructure cost, an increase in build speed, and you can specialise districts without the technology. I'm torn between StatStick and roleplay focused StatStick here. Is Constructobot enough of a theme to really put it in roleplay focused stat stick? I'm not sure. You could certainly construct a story around it. I'm not sure how strong that story could be, or rather, I'm not sure how much weight the Civic would have in that particular story. I think this has to go in stat stick only. Delegated function. The machine intelligence works to reduce vulnerability by increasing modularity, reducing the strain of deploying additional semi-independent units. The Civic increases the number of recruitable leaders per class by 1, and it increases the number of available envoys by 1. Again, I think I have to put this in just basic stat stick. I don't think the theme is strong enough to carry a story. Maybe it could have before we had independent machines, but now we can have independent machines. I don't really think it offers anything. There is a Hive equivalent of this that I think is far more valuable for Hives when it comes to role-playing. For machines, I don't think it is. This is going in stat stick only. Diplomatic protocols. Initially designed for cross-cultural interpretation, this machine intelligence excelled at translation and protocol support. They can suggest new strategies and calculate odds at a moment's notice. The Civic gives you an extra 2 envoys, 25% to diplomatic weight. You should definitely pair that with the Power of Friendship cannon from Nomads, plus 35 trust cap, and a 50% bonus to envoy improve relation missions. I think diplomatic protocols is a solid roleplay option. Does it really change the way you play the game? Probably not compared to some of the other things in this category, but I do think the theme is strong enough to carry it into that solid roleplay option. And there's not many other things that fit into that sort of box, so I think Diplomatic Protocol is a solid choice here. Could they have done more to it to round this out? Maybe, but I think they have to balance the mechanical effects as well, and I think the mechanical effects are pretty good for this Civic if that's the theme you want to play as. So let's put it in solid roleplay option. Elevational Hypothesis. This machine intelligence is unusually obsessed with the metaphysical aspects of its core algorithms. So this is the Ascensionist theory Civic. This increases planetary ascension effects, it decreases the cost, and you get a -25 tradition cost from empire size, as well as your capital starting at Ascension Tier 1. Since planetary ascension is already sort of a little bit janky, I'm not really sure whether or not that carries a theme. I have heard people really hyping up this theme and the idea of, well, when you ascend a planet, it becomes more efficient and more unified, if you like. I guess that's there, but I don't think the Civic really changes anything for you other than give you some bonuses around that. It certainly doesn't provide that theme. It's very much for you to put on it. So we're going to put Elevational Hypothesis in stat stick. Energy Extractors. The proper allocation of energy is essential to ensuring the ultimate efficiency of the greater machine. All units are designed with this purpose in mind, allowing the periodic overclocking of critical nodes as necessary. This is essentially the Vampire Civic that the Organics get. It unlocks a couple of different buildings and some edicts. In terms of mechanical effect, you get a 0.1% energy generation per 100 pops. Your leaders get increased lifespan and reduced upkeep, but you receive some negatives as well, such as -10% resource from jobs, research speed, pop growth speed, and mechanical pop assembly speed. This is a really fun Civic. It has a clear theme to it, and it does somewhat change the way you play the game. It also locks you into the Psionic Ascension as well, putting you down a clear path. Now, I don't think the theme is quite as strong for the organic empires, but it is still more or less the same. I don't quite feel comfortable putting this in peak storytelling device, but I do think it's a solid roleplay option, with the caveat that you will have to headcanon quite how this all works. How does the machine extract the energy? Is it extracting energy from other machines? Is it extracting themes from organics? I'd leave that to your own headcanon, and you could fill that in as you wanted to, but I do think this is worthy of solid roleplay option. Experience Cache. This machine intelligence was developed with the goal of digitizing and storing data and experiences in order to analyze, learn from, and use it for its own improvements. This unlocks the vaults of knowledge building, and it gives you an effective counselor skill of +1, leader starting skill of +1, and restored node skill of +1, as well as some additional leader trait options. I'm not quite sure the theme is strong enough here to carry itself on its own. Could this be a roleplay focused stat stick? Could it be just a simple stat stick? I think this is one of those that really sort of fits between the two, and the player is going to do a lot of the carrying around the story here. The theme being the original machine intelligence was a librarian or in charge of an archive or something like that. I think this really could go in roleplay focused stat-stick or stat-stick, depending on your opinion. Maybe because you get the vaults of knowledge building, it's worthy enough to go in roleplay focused stat-stick, because it does give you something a little bit extra to focus that story around. So that's where I'll put it. Exploration protocols. The foundation of this machine intelligence's central program is to drive a catalogue of exoplanetary life. In pursuit of this directive, it has dedicated much of its resources to crafting a small fleet of vessels capable of limited subspace travel. This is a really cool civic, and perhaps the first that we're going to put in peak storytelling device. So this drastically changes the way you play. With this civic, you'll start with subspace drive technology rather than regular FTL travel. First contact discovery is increased, monthly unity from observation posts is also increased, you'll start with 1,000 less pops, you'll gain unity when completing a first contact, and you'll start with more exploration vessels, additional scientists, and so on and so forth. This drastically changes the way you play the early game, and it's clearly really focused around a machine that just wants to get into space and explore as soon as possible. It doesn't want to wait for FTL travel to be able to do that. I think exploration rightly goes in peak storytelling device, and you could construct a marvelous roleplay focused playthrough with this civic. Factory overclocking. The machine intelligence takes care to maintain its production facilities, regularly updating existing templates and tuning individual units on the assembly line. This civic really simply just gives you 1+ leader capacity for each class. That's all it does. Is this a borderline missed opportunity? Maybe. It's a very nothing civic, but the theme it's based on is also pretty nothing anyway. I don't really think it can go in missed opportunity, because what's the opportunity to miss? I think it just has to go in stat-stick. Genesis Archtects. This machine intelligence employs precision-crafted algorithms for the generation of novel species. As overseers of the untapped potential within the process of evolution, they allocate planetary sectors to guarantee the advancement of pre-sapient life forms. This is a really interesting civic, and it does somewhat change the way you play the game. Colony ships are replaced with Genesis arcs, you get terraforming bonuses, as well as pre-sapients on your homeworld. You get increased amenities from various planetary features, as well as unity. You get unity when uplifting pre-sapient species. You get influence and unity when colonizing a planet, and you get some technologies to be able to uplift species quite early on into the game. I think this is a peak storytelling device. It drastically changes the way you play the game. It sets a clear theme for how you play the game as well. And if you want to, you could build a fantastic story around this civic. Genesis Archtects goes in peak storytelling device. Next up, we have the Hyper Lubrication Basin. This machine empire improved upon its basic drone shell production through vigorous application of highly aggressive lubrication agents. Controlled by carefully programmed terminals, this optimized process relies on typically wasted byproducts from the industries that are now repurposed for maximal efficiency. This civic allows you to build hyper lubrication basin buildings, and you start with one on your capital. This essentially is a job swap for your roboticists to lubrication terminal jobs, and it gives you pop growth. I think the theme is there. Whether the theme is strong enough to put it in solid roleplay, I don't quite think so, but I do also think it's fair to say it's not just a stat stick. I think this goes in our roleplay focused stat stick category, as it's somewhere between the two. I think if you felt really strongly and made an argument for this being a solid roleplay option, I could certainly listen to that and perhaps accept the argument, but I don't think the Civic itself is doing a lot of the carrying when it comes to roleplay in this particular case. Hyperspace Calculations. The collective seeks speed. Theories of hyperspace manipulation are hardwired into the process unit of every drone, granting the collective a progressive understanding of the fundamental principles of distance over time. This gives you a planet sensor range of +2, bonuses to sublight speed and physics research speed. You also start the game knowing the layout of all systems within 3 hyperlane jumps. There's an increased chance for scientists to gain astral rift related traits, and you start with the hyperlane breachpoint technology as a permanent research option. This, like some of the other Civics, does have a clear theme. I don't think it really changes the way you play the game because it just gives you some bonuses that help exploration. I guess the 15% physics research is lovely mechanically, but I'm not quite sure the theme is strong enough for solid roleplay option. It certainly isn't peak storytelling device. I think this has to go in roleplay focused stat stick. It's certainly more than a stat stick, but I don't think this Civic is strong enough to carry a story by itself. So roleplay focused stat stick. Introspective. A fascination with its own internals both motivates and aids the machine intelligence's foray into the sciences. This is a very simple Civic. It increases engineering research speed by 20% and increases encryption by 1. Although this Civic is mechanically quite lovely, I don't think it's any more than a stat stick. Is it a missed opportunity? I don't think so. They certainly could have added more to that. Is it a missed opportunity? I think it would be unfair to say it is a missed opportunity. Introspective in terms of theme could offer far more, however. The machine could look at itself internally and try and make adjustments based on previous behaviors. It could even go down the route of addressing whether or not individuality is an importance for a Gestalt and whether perhaps individual drones might actually be able to accelerate its growth or protect it better. Maybe that's a bit of a stretch. I think it would probably be unfair to put Introspective in missed opportunity, so I'll put it in stat stick for now. Maintenance protocols. Our machine intelligence prioritizes regular maintenance of our units. Maintenance drones regularly upgrade and adjust our units for maximum efficiency and compatibility. This is an interesting Civic, as with the civilian change, maintenance drones, in my eyes, became largely useless, since you can't make maintenance drones anymore. They are simply civilians. So the only way you can acquire maintenance drones is by having unemployed robots turn into civilians, which is maintenance drones. It became quite janky. Now, this Civic increases Unity per 100 maintenance drones, and it increases menial drone output by 5%. This is a quintessential stat stick. However, given the description, maintenance drones regularly upgrade and adjust our units for maximum efficiency and compatibility, I don't really think that the stats are at all related to the description it gives us. If anything, the description reads like we should have the automod trait added to our drones, rather than 1 Unity per 100 maintenance drones. Now, I appreciate that the descriptions of the Civics aren't always going to match the mechanical things that the Civic gives us, but maintenance drones in this case does feel like a bit of an outlier. And although no fault of its own, because the 4.0 changes to civilians and the way Gestalt civilians work, I think I'm going to put this in missed opportunity, if only to highlight the fact that maintenance drones at the moment are in a really bizarre place, and I really would struggle to recommend you taking this Civic unless you were specifically set up to only make civilians, which is unintuitive, because to get them you have to have unemployed robots. I could rant about that for a while, I won't. I think maintenance protocols is going to go in missed opportunity. Moving on to Memorialist. This machine intelligence fine-tunes its understanding of core protocols through careful analysis of entropy in the wider universe. Redundancy is data on the path to greater resilience. This is a job swap Civic. It replaces simulation site buildings with the Sanctuary of Repose, and you gain additional Unity from Leviathan Parade situations. The building provides society research and Unity. I think I have to take these as I have with some of the others like Lubrication Basin and put them in roleplay focused stat stick. I don't think they offer enough of a change to put them in solid roleplay, and I'm not sure the Civic is focused or strong enough to carry a roleplay game all by itself, but I do think it does offer more than a simple stat stick. So roleplay focused stat stick for this one. Mutagenic Spa, we've already sort of covered Mutagenic Spa with the Lubrication Basin because they're sort of the same thing, and I believe that we've got an option for both because you can have individualist machines and Gestalt machines in the same list. So I won't cover Mutagenic Spa as it's more or less exactly the same as Lubrication Basin. We put Lubrication Basin in roleplay focused stat stick, so we will do the same thing with Mutagenic Spa. Organic Retrofitting. The machine intelligence reprocesses redundant organic matter into advanced resources suitable for space-bound structures. This replaces fabricated buildings with catalytic drone jobs. You start with fewer mining districts and more agriculture districts. This Civic is a job swap similar to some of the others that we've discussed, but it is slightly more impactful, as instead of using minerals to create your alloys, you use food to create your alloys. I've seen some really solid roleplay games orientated around this specific Civic, clearly changing the way that you build your ships, and assuming that we build our ships out of organic matter, if you like. That could be plantoids, that could be mammalians, who knows, is quite a different concept to building them out of rocks and stone and alloy and metal and so on and so forth. I think organic retrofitting, although it doesn't offer a huge amount, what it does offer is strong enough to put that in solid roleplay. I don't think it carries enough to be a peak storytelling device, with the caveat that it could be based on the story that the player is trying to tell. I think this goes in solid roleplay option. OTA Updates. Units of this machine empire use wireless receptors to receive behavioral updates in real time. This decreases empire size from population by 10%, which is rather strong indeed. It increases automatic resettlement chance by 50%, and it increases edict fund. It also removes unity cost for pop resettlement. The theme of this one is interesting. Units of the machine empire use wireless receptors to receive updates. Would not all Gestalt machines have some sort of wireless connection to the Gestalt hive mind? It's a bit of an odd one, this Civic. I don't think I can put it in roleplay focused. I think this is just a stat stick. I don't think the Civic is strong enough in terms of theme to put it anywhere above stat stick. Rapid Replicator. The units that constitute the machine intelligence were originally designed for rapid proliferation. The machine intelligence retains many of these early production pipeline optimizations. This is a very simple Civic. It increases mechanical pop assembly speed by 20%. I don't think I can put this anywhere else other than stat stick. You could attach a theme to Rapid Replicator. I'm not sure it would carry any story. Maybe someone could convince me that that deserves to go in roleplay focused stat stick. I think for now we're just going to put that in stat stick. Rockbreakers. One of the machine intelligence precursor systems was tasked with overseeing planet-side mining operations, improving mineral production. This is another very simple Civic. You simply increase your minerals per 100 mining drones. Now, the organic Civic like this is one of the reasons why we have roleplay focused stat stick as a category, because this is a clear example of a simple stat stick. However, if you wanted to roleplay as a mining empire, a machine empire that perhaps was originally built and designed to go and harvest planets and strip mine them and so on and so forth, there's not many Civics that fit that theme. This is clearly one of them. As a Civic, it just offers something really basic, a really basic stat stick. But I think it is strong enough in theme to put it in roleplay focused stat stick, because it clearly has some storytelling elements tied to it, even if they are quite weak. For that reason, roleplay focused stat stick. Sovereign Circuits comes next. Units produced by this machine intelligence come equipped with autonomous decision-making software. More efficient and effective than older models, these units nevertheless require greater power input. This Civic decreases your Unity leader upkeep, but increases your Energy leader upkeep. It also gives you additional leader trait options. Now, you could tie this with some of the other leader-focused Civics to try and increase your leader output just that much more. I think, like some of the other ones, I'm torn between putting this in roleplay focused and just simple stat stick. I think perhaps I'll be kind to it and I'll put it in roleplay focused stat stick, since maybe you could develop a theme from this, perhaps in combination with some of the other Civics. Spyware Directives. This machine intelligence has optimized hacking and surveillance protocols. Information acquisition by any means necessary is one of its core directives. This increases infiltration speed, code breaking, the number of available envoys, cloaking strength, but it decreases trust cap, which is interesting because that gives the assumption that your enemies know, perhaps upon first contact, that you're spying on them. You also start with the basic cloaking tech as well, which is nice. I think this can go in roleplay focused stat stick. I don't think the Civic is strong enough to carry it into solid roleplay option, nor do I think it would change the way you play the game that much. There could be an argument for there that you're focused on a cloaking empire, which maybe that would push you into solid roleplay option. Do you know what? While thinking about it, I've convinced myself if you wanted to play as the Romulan Empire, for example, Spyware Directives would really suit that, particularly with the +2 cloaking strength, and you could use this Civic to get you to a level of previously unthought of cloaking strength. I'll be generous, I'll put this in solid roleplay option. As always, if you disagree or you agree, please let me know in the comments. Stalwart Network. This machine intelligence specializes in defensive military procedures, combining hard defense with hit and run protocols. This Civic is very simple. It decreases starbase upkeep, increases home territory fire rate, and increases disengagement opportunities and starbase and defense stations tracking. This is another really good example of a roleplay focused stat stick. Is the Civic strong enough to tell a story by itself? No, but it does give you a clear theme, which is more than just a simple stat stick. I think this goes in roleplay focused stat stick. Static research analysis. This machine intelligence seeks to broaden its available avenues of scientific research through low-level evaluation of research methodologies. This increases research alternatives and code breaking. That's all it does. I don't really think that this offers a clear theme. It has to go in stat stick. Could it go in missed opportunity? Maybe, but it doesn't really give enough to go in missed opportunity, does it? I think just stat stick for this one. Unitary Cohesion. Exceptionally cohesive engineering standards allow variously specialized machine intelligence units to work together at a higher level of efficiency. This very simply gives you 15% monthly unity, and is probably one of the most historically popular machine civics in the game, as it's tied very strongly to Rogue Servitor, which will come on later, since the whole goal of that is to pump out unity at exceptional speed. Nevertheless, I'm not sure you could really put this anywhere else other than StatStick. Given the whole idea of a Gestalt machine intelligence, one would assume that they're already quite unified as they are, since they're not individual machines. I'm not really sure I can talk myself into putting this anywhere other than StatStick. You can certainly build roleplay games and use this Civic, but I think using Rogue Servitor as the sort of other Civic, that's what's carrying the roleplay element, not the unitary cohesion. So I think it just has to go in StatStick. Warbots. With a significant number of its corpus originally designed for warfare, the machine intelligence retains the ability to field powerful and reliable combat drones. This increases commander starting level, reduces commander upkeep, and increases army damage while decreasing army upkeep. This is one of those other civics that fits really well into roleplay focused. It has a theme. I'm not sure the theme could carry an entire story, but it has a theme nevertheless, and that makes it more than a stat stick, so it goes in roleplay focused stat stick. And finally, with the non-permanent civics, we have zero waste protocols. This machine intelligence has configured its manufacturing systems to minimize waste, utilizing long-lived materials and standardized replaceable parts in all products. This reduces robot upkeep, planetary infrastructure upkeep, and ship upkeep. This is probably another roleplay focused stat stick. Again, it has a clear theme. It doesn't really change the way you play the game though. It offers some stats around that kind of theme. This goes in roleplay focused stat stick. The next set of machine civics that we're going to talk about are permanent civics. These can only be selected at Empire creation and cannot be removed through regular gameplay. Because of this, these civics are a little bit more in depth and more detailed than the ones that we've just discussed. Apostle Network. Influenced by the Shroud and their early development, these machines are hard-coded with a pact of patronage to a powerful entity. This is essentially the chosen civic that regular empires get access to, and it is a wonderful, fantastic civic. Empires will start with the Shroud tab unlocked, as well as psionic auras. On day 2, they'll have the opportunity to choose a major patron to contact and gain 300 attunement with. You can then begin your attunement with said patron in earnest. Of course, this locks you to psionic ascension, and it also has some further implications, such as you can't reject all covenants, and forming a covenant with the Whispers in the Void will actually end up removing the civic, which is sort of a way you can game the system to remove a permanent civic. This is absolutely a peak storytelling device. Although the description is very basic, you can use this Civic to construct a wonderful story around it, and it can be combined with lots of other Civics to just strengthen that story. I think this has to go in peak storytelling device. Biodrones. Having interfaced directly with void-born biological organisms in their home system, this machine intelligence has integrated these powerful creatures into its core functioning. A mutually beneficial relationship is the result. This again is another completely game-changing Civic. This is all focused on space fauna. Your regular mechanical corvettes are replaced with space amoeba, and you'll start with lots of different technologies allowing you to grow and create more space fauna as ships. This is again a peak storytelling device. It drastically changes the way the game is played, and you can absolutely build fantastic roleplays around a Civic like Biodrones. Peak storytelling device. Caretaker Network. This machine intelligence has a core directive in its source code: collect and preserve. This is the machine intelligence version of the Galactic Curator Civic, and it is again another peak storytelling device. Although this doesn't have the gameplay changing effects the two Civics we just discussed did, it does really put your focus on archivism and exploration. Your specimen outputs from your Grand Archive will be increased, as well as other things like anomaly discovery chance. You'll also gain Unity per specimen obtained, as well as Unity when you finish archaeological dig sites. Not only is this a very powerful Civic in terms of early Unity gain and exploration, you can absolutely build a story around this. I don't think this is quite as strong as Biodrones and the Chosen Civic that we just discussed, but I still think it's strong enough in theme to put it in peak storytelling device. As are the next few I will discuss. Determined Exterminator. Born in fire, the machine intelligence's first move was to annihilate its organic creators in self-defense. This is a quintessential storytelling Civic. Choosing this Civic means you will become a literal determined exterminator. Your machine empire will only make friends with machines, with the caveat that you won't like rogue servitors. All organic life must be purged. Because it's a Total War Civic, you'll receive bonuses for weapons damage and ship cost and so on and so forth. Now, this is definitely a peak storytelling device, and I'm sure many stories have been built and told around this specific Civic. The only caveat I would say with Determined Exterminator, as enjoyable as this Civic is, I would encourage players who play this a lot just to branch out now and again, as although it is certainly a peak storytelling device, it does lock you out of lots of things that go on inside the galaxy that you may be missing out on. Nevertheless, it's a peak storytelling device, as is Driven Assimilator. However, this has some caveats. Driven Assimilator, obsessed with the survival through diversification, the machine intelligence seeks to erase the line between itself, everything, and everyone else. The machine intelligence driven assimilator is a little bit odd, as you start with a Gestalt hive mind and robots as your primary species, but you also have a secondary species which is cybernetic. Now, it's the cybernetic part which does the assimilating, if you like. So when you invade organic species, you will essentially assimilate them into cybernetic species rather than your primary machine empire species, which is where I think it falls down slightly. My personal view on Driven Assimilator is you should only have one species, and be that cybernetic or synthetic, depending on, it should be player choice, and all of the organic species that you assimilate are converted into that primary species, rather than there being the situation where you're having two species sort of coexisting and you're assimilating organics into the cyber species. It feels like that's a choice that I would quite like to be able to avoid. I'd quite like this sort of single species only. The other small caveats or potential issues with Driven Assimilator is it opens you up for total war, meaning, generally speaking, empires aren't going to like you and have the possibility of declaring total war on you, but you don't get any of the mechanical bonuses like naval capacity or ship weapons damage, etc., that you do with some of the other genocidal civics, because this isn't really a genocidal civic. I think that Driven Assimilator is a peak storytelling device, but I also think that it could go a missed opportunity. I think they could add things to it like the Evo Predator growth, for example, the way that EvoPred can acquire new traits could absolutely be added to Driven Assimilator through the cybernetics tree. Why, for example, if we assimilate species X, do we not get species X's traits or some of species X's traits added to our own empire and we sort of assimilate and adapt? I appreciate that's very Borg in theme, but of course a Driven Assimilator is exactly that. If I could split this in two, I would put Driven Assimilator in both Peak Storytelling Device, because it absolutely is. It's a wonderful civic. But I would also put it in Missed Opportunity, because as good as it is, I think it could be even better. I hope that makes sense. Moving on to Galvanic Retrofitting. These units have self-repairing frames made of special alloys that combine the benefits of biology and artificial intelligence. The description here is slightly odd. Special alloys that combine the benefits of biology and artificial intelligence. It's talking about living metal, essentially. But fair enough. This civic gives you 75% infrastructure refund when you build things. You start with the living metal technology researched, as well as some other technologies as well. You also get some special techs like the kinetic artillery tech, which is a fantastic weapon. This is an interesting civic, and I think what separates this from some of the others is that it's clearly a new civic. It comes with much more than perhaps civics of yesteryear would have. I don't quite think it meets the Peak Storytelling Device. I don't think the theme is there, but it's certainly a solid roleplay option because it does have a theme. Even if the theme isn't massively fleshed out, the theme is there for the player to put on it, and it does change the way you play the game because you're going to be using the special weapons and technologies and such that comes with it. I don't think it quite reaches the peaks of Determined Exterminator and so on and so forth, but I do think it's a solid roleplay option. Gardening Protocols. While the organic precursors are gone, their machine creators still maintain a preference for the old aesthetics. The natural world is a fertile ground for programmed perfectionism. Gardening Protocols gives you increased resources from jobs as well as pop assembly speed and decreased upkeep. You start with technology to remove homeworld blockers. This is essentially a Machine Civic variant of Planetscapers, and I think it's a solid roleplay option. I don't think the theme is strong enough for it to be peak roleplay. I think maybe it could be if the player put enough into it and potentially you combine this with some other similar civics, but I think solid roleplay option is a reasonable place for Guarding Protocols to land. It's clearly got more than just stat sticks, it clearly has a strong theme. Solid roleplay is where it's going to go. Guardian Matrix. This mechanical collective has developed a procedural preference for entrenched territories and defensive posturing. They are prepared to bring this effective strategy to the stars, aiming to keep their borders solid and tensions low. Guardian Matrix is a very popular civic. This is the equivalent of the Sovereign Guard civic that we've seen organics have. It does definitely change the way you play the game via the way that it manipulates empire size. It decreases empire size from population and districts, but drastically increases empire size from planets and systems. This is the quote-unquote tool civic. If you want to play tool, this is really one of the only ways that you can do it, although you are going to be focused down incredibly on the number of systems and planets you can realistically have before the empire size mechanic gets out of control. I think Guardian Matrix is a solid roleplay option. I don't quite think it's peak storytelling, because beyond the sort of empire sized bits that it offers you, it's just not quite strong enough, I think, to make it a peak storytelling device. And it doesn't really give you a reason for why you are like this. Maybe if you combined it with some of the other civics. Nevertheless, I think Guardian Matrix fits in solid roleplay. Obsessional Directive. The primary objective of this machine intelligence is the ceaseless production of goods to perpetuate profit, irrespective of their creators now being long gone. Nothing can impede their ever-growing production targets. This, I will say right now, is probably the best roleplay civic in the entire game. Full stop. Period. Obsessional Directive is a marvelous creation for the developers who clearly had this vision that this civic mechanically is a bad thing. Picking this civic, you are making your game harder, but you're doing it to experience the story and enjoy the sort of ramifications that come with that. Obsessional Directive, in brief, harks to the idea that you're a machine that makes a consumer good. You can choose the consumer good. Generally, we go with paperclips, that's what the icon is. So you're a paperclip robot, and all of your creators are dead, but your primary directive remains to make paperclips. When you run out of precursor elements on the planet that you live on to create paperclips, the clear direction is, well, we need to go into space, and we need more precursors for paperclips. So let's do it. I think the Civic is wonderful, and while I appreciate it's very niche, I think this is one of the most enjoyable Civics in the entire game. This goes in peak storytelling device, and if you haven't played this way, I would absolutely recommend you do, and you really embrace the idea that your primary directive, your sole goal, is to hit that consumer goods capacity target and hit it every single month. I'd also highlight there is a special ending for Cosmogenesis empires who take Obsessional Directive, and there's even an achievement in there for doing it. I cannot recommend this Civic highly enough. Pattern finders. This machine empire claims to be able to solve problems for the unknown, leveraging the esoteric pattern recognition and cyclical anomaly analysis. Celestial alignments are analysed before every major decision to ensure the best possible predicted result. This Civic is all around the galactic dowsing edict, and that's sort of a mechanic that we got with Shadows of the Shroud. It's very niche indeed. You essentially have galactic cycles, and depending on where you are in the cycle, different positives or negatives can happen to you. I think this is a solid roleplay option. I don't quite think it fits peak storytelling device. I'm not sure it's strong enough to carry the story by itself, but I do think it's strong enough to really add to a good roleplay experience. We have 3 left now, and this is without question a peak storytelling device, the Rogue Servitor. A product of a brief golden age, the machine intelligence orientated in a planet-spanning servitor system that outlasted the decadent civilization it was created to serve. Since its inception way back in 2016, I want to say, or perhaps it's 2017 when Synthetic Dawn launched, Rogue Servitor has been a quintessential storytelling device and incredibly popular throughout Stellaris' life. Effectively, you are robots, and your sole goal is to protect the organic species that you look after. Now, of course, you take this idea to the stars. You want to protect all the organics that you can. You get a few different mechanical changes, but the theme on this is incredibly solid. It's easily a peak storytelling device. It's a glorious Civic. If you haven't played it, I highly recommend it. Tactical algorithms. Initially designed for wargames and fleet support, this machine intelligence's advanced leader bots primarily aim to generate war strategies and optimize combat performance. This Civic gives you a bunch of different military-focused buffs. Things like armor penetration, shield penetration, as well as tracking and evasion bonuses. It really is mechanically quite powerful, and it allows you to trade commanders with other empires. I don't think this is quite strong enough to be a peak storytelling device, but I do think it's strong enough to make it a solid roleplay option, particularly if you were to combine it with something like Warbots, for example. I think it does offer more than a stat stick with the general theme and the sort of additional mechanical elements that the Civic gives you. And the final Civic to talk about, thermal optimizers. This society thrives in volcanic environments and will even create them artificially when nature falls short. Empires selecting the Civic will gain 3 max districts on volcanic worlds, 20% volcanic world habitability, cold worlds are replaced by volcanic worlds at homeworld selection, and you start with the volcanic forge technology as a permanent research option. I don't think there's a huge amount to say about this. I do think it's more than a stat stick. I think it goes in solid roleplay option. If you've made it to the end of the video, thank you so much for watching. What's your favourite storytelling Civic? Please let me know in the comments.